The silver blade pressed against her throat gleamed in the moonlight, but Aria Nightingale wasn't afraid of dying. She was afraid of living another day as the pack's greatest disappointment. "Choose," the masked figure whispered, his voice like gravel and smoke. "Your old life of shame, or a new beginning that will change everything." Behind them, the sounds of her former mate's wedding celebration echoed through the forest. The life that should have been hers, now belonging to another. The blade moved away from her neck, and for the first time in months, Aria felt like she could breathe. She had no idea that this mysterious stranger would soon become her salvation, her torment, and the key to unlocking a power that would shake the very foundations of the werewolf world. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. This story begins 3 hours earlier, on what was supposed to be the happiest night of Aria's life. Chapter 1. Aria's hands trembled as she fastened the delicate silver clasp of her grandmother's antique bracelet. Tonight was her mating ceremony with Caden Ashworth, the Beta's son, and her childhood sweetheart. She'd dreamed of this moment for years, picturing how perfect everything would be when they finally completed their bond under the full moon. "You look radiant," her best friend Mira said from behind her, adjusting the flowing train of Aria's ice blue gown. At 19, Mira was 2 years younger but had always been the more confident of the two, bold where Aria was cautious, fierce where Aria was gentle. "Thanks," Aria whispered, though her reflection in the mirror told a different story. Her auburn hair had been twisted into an elegant updo, and the dress hugged her petite frame beautifully, but something felt wrong. The emerald necklace her late mother had left her seemed to pulse with an odd energy against her skin. "Nervous?" Mira asked, catching the worry in Aria's green eyes. Aria forced a smile. "Just excited." But that wasn't entirely true. Caden had been distant lately, missing their traditional weekly runs through the Shadowmere forest. When she'd asked about it, he'd claimed his father needed help with pack security matters. Still, she'd caught him having hushed conversations with Valentina Cross, the strongest female warrior in their pack, everything Aria wasn't. The Crimson Ridge pack valued strength above all else, and Aria had always been the exception. While other wolves excelled in combat and hunting, her gifts lay in healing and ancient lore. She could mend bones with her touch and read the old prophecies, but some pack members whispered she was too weak to be mated to someone of Caden's standing. "The ceremony hall is packed," Mira continued, trying to lighten the mood. Wolves from 3 neighboring territories came to witness the union. Alpha Blackthorn looks especially pleased. Aria nodded, smoothing down her dress one final time. Alpha Blackthorn had always supported her relationship with Caden, seeing the political advantages of uniting the pack's most promising beta in training with the daughter of their former head healer. The walk to the ceremony hall felt like a dream. Hundreds of candles flickered in the ancient stone chamber, casting dancing shadows on the walls carved with moon symbols and pack history. The air thrummed with anticipation and the wild magic that always grew stronger during the full moon. Aria's heart hammered as she walked down the aisle, past faces she'd known her entire life. Some smiled warmly, others whispered behind their hands. Caden stood at the altar in his formal black ceremonial robes, but something was wrong. He wouldn't meet her eyes, and his usually warm brown gaze seemed cold and distant. Alpha Blackthorn, a distinguished man with silver-streaked hair who'd led their pack for 25 years, began the ancient ritual with words about loyalty and strength. Then came the moment that would change everything. "Caden Ashworth," the Alpha's voice echoed through the hall. "Do you accept Aria Nightingale as your mate, to stand beside you through shadow and flame, to protect and cherish her until the moon calls you home?" The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Caden's voice cracked. "I cannot." Gasps rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Aria felt the ground tilt beneath her feet as her world came crashing down. "I choose Valentina Cross," Caden announced, his voice growing stronger with conviction. She's not strong enough to be my mate. Our pack needs warriors, not healers who faint at the sight of blood. She's gentle and kind, but that's not enough. Not for what's coming." Valentina emerged from the crowd, her victory smile barely concealed. She was everything Aria wasn't: tall, muscular, with striking platinum blonde hair and the kind of confidence that commanded respect. "I've been seeing Valentina for weeks," Caden continued, each word a dagger to Aria's heart. "She's everything a beta's mate should be: strong, fierce, capable of leading beside me." "I'm sorry, Aria, but you're not enough." The pack's murmurs turned to open discussion. Some nodded in agreement, others looked away in embarrassment. Aria stood frozen, humiliation burning through her veins as she felt the weight of hundreds of stares. "Caden," Alpha Blackthorn's voice cut through the chaos, "you would break a sacred bond for—" "I would choose strength over weakness," Caden interrupted, "as any true leader should." Aria couldn't breathe. "I couldn't think. Couldn't do anything but stand there as her heart shattered into a million pieces." The emerald necklace at her throat grew warm, almost hot, but she barely noticed through her shock. She began, then stopped. She couldn't complete the acceptance of his rejection. Not here. Not in front of everyone she'd ever known. Instead, she ran. Her heels clicking against the stone floor echoed through the chamber as she fled, past the shocked faces, past the whispers that had already begun. She heard Mira calling after her, but she couldn't stop. Couldn't face the pity, the judgment, the confirmation that everyone had always doubted whether she belonged. She ran through the pack house, past the common areas where other pack members stopped their conversations to stare, and out into the night. The full moon hung heavy and silver above the Shadowmere forest, calling to her wolf even through her anguish. Hours later, she found herself deep in the woods, sitting beside the old moonstone circle where she used to practice her healing magic as a child. Her dress was torn from branches, her carefully styled hair had come undone, and her feet were bloody from running barefoot over rough ground. But she wasn't alone. A figure stepped out from behind the ancient stones, moving with predatory grace. He was tall and imposing, dressed in black leather that seemed to absorb the moonlight. Most striking of all was his face, angular and handsome, but marked by a jagged scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw. His eyes were the most unusual she'd ever seen, one silver like moonlight, one gold like flame. "Beautiful night for a rejected mating ceremony," he said, his voice carrying a slight accent she couldn't place. Aria's breath caught. "Who are you?" "This is private pack land." The stranger smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm someone who understands what it's like to lose everything in a single moment." He stepped closer, and she caught his scent, pine, leather, and something wild and dangerous that made her wolf whimper with recognition. "You're not packed," she said, though something about him felt familiar. "No," he agreed. "I'm something else entirely. And I have a proposition for you, Aria Nightingale." Her heart stopped. "How do you know my name?" "I know many things." He reached into his jacket and withdrew an elegant envelope sealed with black wax, "including the fact that you have a choice to make. You can return to your pack, face their pity and whispers for the rest of your life, or you can come with me and discover what you're truly capable of." Aria stared at the envelope, her mind reeling. "I don't understand." "Open it," he said simply. With shaking fingers, she broke the wax seal and unfolded the heavy parchment inside. The words made her gasp. Contract marriage proposal duration, 1-year compensation, $50 million additional terms, training in ancient magic discretion required serious inquiries only. $50 million, she whispered. Plus training that will unlock abilities you never knew you possessed, the stranger added. I can teach you to be more than just a healer, Aria. I can show you how to be powerful. This is insane. I don't even know who you are. My name is Damon Silvermane, he said, executing a slight bow. Alpha of the Midnight Moon Pack, and your potential husband, if you're brave enough to accept. Aria's mind raced. Damon Silvermane. She'd heard whispers of that name, a reclusive alpha who controlled vast business empires and was said to be one of the most powerful wolves in North America. But he was also rumored to be dangerous, ruthless, and completely untouchable. Why me? She asked. Because you're not what you appear to be, he said, his mismatched eyes studying her intently. That little display of healing magic you think no one knows about? That's just the beginning. You have abilities that could change the balance of power between packs, but you'll never discover them sitting in your room crying over a boy who wasn't worthy of you anyway. The words stung, but they also sparked something deep inside her, a hunger she'd never acknowledged. I need time to think. No, Damon interrupted. The offer expires at dawn. Choose now, Aria. Will you remain the weak, rejected wolf your pack believes you to be? Or will you become something extraordinary? Behind them, she could hear voices calling her name. The pack had sent search parties. Soon they would find her here, and she'd have to face their pity, their whispers, their confirmation that she'd never been enough. The emerald necklace at her throat pulsed with warmth again, and for just a moment, she could have sworn she heard her mother's voice whispering, "Trust your instincts, little moon. Your destiny is greater than you know." Aria looked up at this mysterious, dangerous man who claimed he could give her everything she'd never dared dream of. "If I say yes," she said slowly, "what exactly am I agreeing to?" Chapter 2. 6 months had passed since Aria left the Crimson Ridge pack, but the ache in her chest remained as sharp as ever. She'd found a small apartment in the human city of Ravenport, 300 miles from everything she'd ever known. The building was old and drafty, with pipes that groaned in the night and neighbors who played music too loud, but it was hers. Starting over had been the hardest thing she'd ever done, even harder than watching Caden choose another mate. But she was surviving barely. "Order up for table 12. Jake called from behind the bar at the Silver Chalice, a supernatural-friendly establishment tucked away in Ravenport's underground district. The bar catered to creatures who preferred to keep their true nature hidden from the human world above. Aria grabbed the tray of blood wine and lunar ale, weaving through the Friday night crowd. The mix of scents hit her immediately: wolves, vampires, fae, and others she couldn't identify. She'd gotten used to masking her own wolf scent with special oils, blending in as just another supernatural trying to make it in the human world. "Here you go," she said, setting down the drinks for a group of young wolves. They were celebrating something, their excitement infectious despite the melancholy that had settled over her like a second skin. "Thanks, sweetheart," one of them said with a charming grin. "You know, a pretty thing like you shouldn't be serving drinks all night. Why don't you join us?" Aria kept her professional smile in place. "Thank you, but I'm working. Let me know if you need anything else." She turned to leave, but the wolf caught her wrist. His eyes flashed amber, a sign his wolf was close to the surface. "Come on, don't be like that. I can smell your packless. Must get lonely." "I said no," Aria replied firmly, trying to pull away. But his grip tightened, claws extending just enough to prick her skin. "Listen here, little lone wolf." The lady said no. The voice wasn't loud, but it carried enough authority to make every supernatural in the immediate area stop talking. Aria turned to see a man standing behind her, and her breath caught in her throat. He was tall and imposing, dressed in an expensive charcoal suit that couldn't hide his powerful build. But it was his face that made her heart skip, angular and devastatingly handsome, with a jagged scar running from his left temple to his jaw. His eyes were the most unusual she'd ever seen, one silver, one gold. Damon Silvermane, the mysterious alpha who had made her that incredible offer 6 months ago. The offer she had ultimately rejected. The drunk wolf snarled. "Mind your own business, stranger. This doesn't concern you." Damon moved with lightning speed, breaking the wolf's grip on Aria's wrist and twisting his arm behind his back in one fluid motion. The drunk wolf howled in pain and submission. When a woman says no, Damon's voice remained dangerously calm. Civilized beings listen. Or perhaps they don't teach basic manners in whatever backwater pack spawned you. "Do you know who I am?" the wolf gasped. "Do you know who I am?" Damon countered, his mismatched eyes flashing with an inner fire that made the temperature in the room seem to drop. The wolf's face went pale as recognition dawned. "Alpha Silvermane." I apologize. I meant no disrespect." "Then show proper respect and leave. Now." The wolf and his friends practically ran for the exit. The rest of the bar slowly returned to their conversations, though Aria noticed many patrons stealing glances at Damon with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright fear. "Are you alright?" Damon asked, turning to Aria. His voice had softened, but she could still feel the power radiating from him like heat from a forge. She nodded, rubbing her wrist, where faint marks were already fading thanks to her accelerated healing. "Thank you. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." His eyes studied her face with an intensity that made her feel exposed. "What are you doing here, Aria?" The question hung between them like a challenge. She'd wondered if she'd ever see him again, and had sometimes dreamed about their encounter in the Moonstone Circle. In her dreams, she'd made a different choice. "Working," she said simply. "Living my life." "Is this the life you wanted?" The question stung because she knew the answer. This wasn't the life she'd dreamed of as a little girl. It wasn't the life she'd planned when she thought she'd mate with Caden and help lead the Crimson Ridge Pack. It was just survival. "It's the life I chose," she said instead. Damon's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his unusual eyes. "I see. Well, I'll let you get back to work." He turned to leave, and panic flared in Aria's chest. She didn't understand why, but the thought of him walking away again felt like losing something precious. "Wait," she called out, surprising herself. "That offer you made, is it still?" "No," he said without turning around. "That opportunity has passed." He disappeared into the crowd, leaving Aria standing there with a strange ache in her chest that had nothing to do with Caden's rejection. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. She kept scanning the bar for another glimpse of silver and gold eyes, but Damon Silvermane had vanished as mysteriously as he'd appeared. It wasn't until she was walking home through Ravenport's quiet streets that she noticed the envelope tucked under her apartment door. Her name was written across the front in elegant script, and the paper felt expensive beneath her fingers. Inside was a single card with an address and a time. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Come alone." There was no signature, but she didn't need one. She recognized the scent clinging to the paper: pine, leather, and that wild, dangerous something that made her wolf pace restlessly. That night, Aria lay awake staring at the ceiling, clutching the card in her hand. Common sense told her to ignore it, to continue building her quiet life in Ravenport. But something deeper, something that had been dormant since the night of her rejection, was stirring to life. Her mother's emerald necklace, which she'd never taken off, pulsed with warmth against her skin. And just like that night in the forest, she could have sworn she heard her mother's voice. "Some doors only open once, little moon. But others wait for you to be ready to walk through them." The next day arrived gray and drizzling, matching Aria's mood as she stood outside the address Damon had given her. It was an elegant office building in Ravenport's financial district, all glass and steel reaching toward the cloudy sky. Silvermane Enterprises was etched in silver letters across the front entrance. Aria took a deep breath, smoothed down her simple black dress, the nicest thing she owned, and walked inside. The lobby was opulent but tasteful, with marble floors and artwork that probably cost more than she made in a year. A receptionist with sharp features and knowing eyes looked up as she approached. "Aria Nightingale?" the woman asked before Aria could speak. "Yes. Mr. Silvermane is expecting you. Penthouse level." The elevator ride to the top floor felt like it lasted forever. Aria's heart hammered against her ribs as floor numbers ticked by, each one taking her further from the safety of anonymity and closer to what? The doors opened directly into Damon's office, and Aria's breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city below, while elegant furniture and carefully chosen art created an atmosphere of refined power. Damon stood with his back to her, looking out at the cityscape. He'd traded his suit for dark jeans and a black shirt that emphasized his broad shoulders and lean strength. "You came," he said without turning around. "You knew I would. I hoped you would." He turned to face her, and the intensity in his mismatched eyes made her pulse quicken. "Please sit." Aria took one of the leather chairs facing his desk, hyper-aware of how small and ordinary she must look in this palace of wealth and power. Why did you really reject my offer 6 months ago? Damon asked, moving to lean against his desk rather than sitting behind it. The direct question caught her off guard. It seemed too good to be true. Too dangerous. And now I'm not sure anything is more dangerous than slowly dying inside while pretending to be happy with scraps. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or approval. What's changed your mind? Aria thought about the past 6 months. The lonely nights, the constant worry about money, the growing sense that she was wasting whatever gifts she'd been born with. Most of all, the restless feeling that she was meant for something more than serving drinks to supernatural creatures who looked through her like she was invisible. I'm tired of being powerless, she said quietly. Tired of letting other people decide what I'm worth. Damon studied her for a long moment. The offer has changed. Her heart sank. Oh. The financial compensation remains the same, he continued, but there are additional requirements, such as, my pack is facing a crisis. We've lost several young wolves recently, not to death, but to despair. They're losing control of their wolves, abandoning their human sides, becoming feral. Traditional pack structure isn't reaching them. Aria frowned. I don't understand what that has to do with me. You're a healer, Aria. Not just of bodies, but of spirits. These wolves need someone who understands what it's like to feel rejected, abandoned, worthless. They need someone who's found a way to keep fighting even when everything seems hopeless. You want me to counsel troubled wolves? I want you to save them, Damon said simply, while simultaneously serving as my contract wife for pack politics. Pack politics. There are those who question my leadership because I have no mate, no heir. A marriage would silence those voices and give me the stability I need to focus on protecting my pack. Aria's mind raced. And in return, $50 million, as originally offered. Plus training and abilities you don't even know you possess. Plus the chance to make a real difference in lives that might otherwise be lost. She stared at him, this powerful alpha who could have any wolf he wanted, asking her, rejected, packless Aria Nightingale, to help save his people. There's something else, Damon added, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. Something I didn't tell you before. What? The reason I sought you out in the first place. The reason I know you're capable of so much more than healing minor cuts and reading old prophecies. Aria's mouth went dry. I don't know what you mean. Your mother, Aria Nightingale, Damon said, watching her carefully. She was my pack's oracle before she mated your father and moved to Crimson Ridge. She was also the most powerful moon-blessed healer in 3 centuries. The world tilted sideways. That's impossible. My mother was just a pack healer. She died when I was 10. She died protecting a secret that some would kill for, Damon corrected. The same secret that's sleeping in your blood, waiting to be awakened. Aria's hand flew to her mother's emerald necklace, which had begun to pulse with an increasingly warm rhythm. What secret? She whispered. Damon's mismatched eyes held hers as he spoke the words that would change everything. You're not just a healer, Aria. You're a moon oracle, one of the last of your kind. And if the wrong people discover what you can do, they'll stop at nothing to control you or destroy you. Chapter 3. A moon oracle? Aria's voice came out as barely a whisper. That's impossible. They're just legends. Damon moved closer, his mismatched eyes never leaving her face. Your mother never told you about the dreams, did she? The ones where you see things before they happen? The way injured animals seek you out in the forest? The reason your healing touch works even when traditional pack healers fail? Aria's hand tightened around her mother's emerald necklace. The warm pulsing had grown stronger, almost like a heartbeat against her skin. How do you know about? Because I've been watching you for longer than you realize, Damon said quietly. Your mother came to me before she died, Aria. She made me promise to protect you when your abilities manifested. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. My mother knew you? Elena was my mentor when I was young and struggling to control my alpha powers. She taught me that true strength comes from understanding, not domination. His voice softened with memory. She also foresaw that her daughter would one day face a choice between safety and destiny. Aria stood abruptly, pacing to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled below her, but all she could see were fragments of half-remembered dreams, silver wolves running under starlight, ancient stone circles humming with power, her mother's voice whispering warnings she'd never understood. "This is too much," she said, pressing her palms against the cool glass. 6 months ago, I was just a rejected mate trying to rebuild her life. Now you're telling me I'm some kind of mythical oracle? Nothing mythical about it, Damon replied. Moon oracles are rare, but they're very real. They can see possible futures, communicate with the spiritual realm, and their healing abilities extend far beyond the physical. They're also... He hesitated. What? They're hunted. There are those who would use an oracle's powers for dark purposes, and others who fear them enough to kill them. Aria turned from the window, her green eyes flashing with anger. So, you want me to sign a contract that could get me killed? I want to offer you protection and training so you can defend yourself, Damon corrected. The abilities are manifesting whether you accept my offer or not. At least this way, you won't face them alone. Before Aria could respond, the office door burst open. A woman strode in without ceremony, tall, elegant, with platinum blonde hair and cold blue eyes that assessed Aria like she was a particularly uninteresting insect. Damon, the woman said, her voice carrying a slight European accent. I wasn't aware you were entertaining guests. Celeste, Damon's voice carried a warning. You should have knocked. Should I have? Celeste's smile was sharp as a blade. I am, after all, your intended mate. Or have you forgotten our arrangement? Aria felt her stomach drop. Intended mate? She looked between Damon and this stunning woman, feeling foolish for thinking she could ever fit into his world. There is no arrangement, Damon said firmly. As I've told you repeatedly, your pack council seems to think otherwise, Celeste replied smoothly. Especially after that rather passionate speech you gave about needing to secure the bloodline. Aria had heard enough. She moved toward the door, but Damon caught her arm. Don't, he said quietly. This isn't what it looks like. It looks like you're already spoken for, Aria replied, pulling free. Thank you for the offer, Alpha Silvermane, but I think I'll pass. Aria, wait. But she was already in the elevator, her heart pounding as the doors closed on Damon's frustrated expression and Celeste's triumphant smile. The ride down felt endless. What had she been thinking? That she, a packless reject, could somehow fit into the life of one of the most powerful alphas in North America? The whole contract marriage idea had been fantasy from the beginning. She was halfway across the lobby when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Parking garage, level B2. We need to talk.
D.
Aria hesitated. The smart thing would be to go home, forget this ever happened, and continue her quiet life serving drinks to supernatural creatures who barely noticed her existence. Instead, she found herself taking the elevator down to the parking garage. Damon was waiting by a sleek black motorcycle, still wearing the dark jeans and black shirt that made him look more like a dangerous rebel than a corporate CEO. His scarred face was shadowed, but his mismatched eyes found hers immediately. Celeste Ravencroft, he said without preamble, is the daughter of a powerful European alpha who wants to form an alliance with my pack. She's been pushing for a political mating for months. And I've refused every advance, every proposal, every hint from my council that I should consider it. He stepped closer. The only reason she was in my office is because I'm announcing my engagement tonight. Aria's heart stuttered. To her? To my contract wife, Damon said, his eyes never leaving hers. If she agrees to the terms. Damon, I can't. 3 young wolves went feral this week, he interrupted. 3 kids who should have had full, happy lives ahead of them. Instead, they're lost in the wilderness, more animal than human, because no one knew how to reach them before it was too late. The pain in his voice made her chest ache. I could have saved them, she whispered, the knowledge coming from some deep, instinctive place. If I'd been there, if I'd known how to use whatever this power is. Yes, Damon said simply. You could have. And there are 7 more hanging on the edge right now. Aria closed her eyes, seeing flashes of images she didn't understand. Young faces twisted with anguish, wolves running mindlessly through dark forests, the silver light of her mother's necklace cutting through shadow and despair. The contract terms, she said finally. I want to see everything. Relief flickered across Damon's features. Of course. We'll go over every detail. And I want to meet these troubled wolves first, before I agree to anything. Agreed. And Celeste? Damon's expression hardened. I will learn that some things can't be bought or bullied into submission. An hour later, Aria found herself in the passenger seat of Damon's motorcycle, racing through the darkening streets toward the Midnight Moon Pack territory. The wind whipped through her hair, and for the first time in months, she felt truly alive. The Pack lands were even more impressive than she'd expected. Thousands of acres of pristine forest surrounding a modern compound that managed to blend luxury with rustic charm. Wolves in both human and animal form moved through the grounds with purpose, their eyes tracking to Damon with obvious respect and affection. They love you, Aria observed as they walked toward the main house. I try to earn it every day, Damon replied. Leadership isn't about dominance, it's about service. The philosophy was so different from what she'd grown up with in Crimson Ridge that it made her chest tight with unexpected emotion. They were met at the front door by a man with kind eyes and graying temples who radiated the calm authority of a seasoned beta. Aria Nightingale, Damon said. Meet Thomas Grayson, my beta and oldest friend. Thomas extended his hand with a warm smile. The healer Elena spoke of. It's an honor. You knew my mother too? She saved my daughter's life when no other healer could help, Thomas said simply. We've been hoping you'd come home to us for a very long time. Home. The word hit her like a physical force, and she had to blink back sudden tears. The young ones are in the East Wing, Thomas continued gently. Fair warning, they're not easy cases. Traditional methods haven't worked. As they walked through corridors lined with Pack photographs and artwork, Aria's necklace grew warmer with each step. By the time they reached the East Wing, it was almost hot against her skin. This is Luna, Damon said, stopping outside a door marked with protective symbols. Through the reinforced glass window, Aria could see a girl who couldn't be more than 16, sitting in the corner of a comfortable room, her knees drawn up to her chest. But it was Luna's eyes that made Aria's breath catch. They were completely silver, devoid of any human awareness. This wasn't just a troubled teen. This was a wolf on the very edge of losing her humanity forever. How long has she been like this? Aria whispered. 3 weeks, Thomas replied grimly. She won't eat, won't speak, won't acknowledge anyone's presence. The Pack doctor says if we can't reach her soon, he didn't need to finish. Aria understood. Luna would become permanently feral, lost to the wild forever. Without conscious thought, Aria placed her hand on the door. The moment her palm touched the metal, Luna's head snapped up, those silver eyes focusing on her with laser intensity. For the first time in weeks, the girl spoke. The Moon Daughter has come, Luna said in a voice like a whispered wind. The broken ones can be made whole again. Aria's mother's necklace flared with brilliant emerald light, and suddenly she could see, really see, the spiritual wounds that were tearing Luna apart, the darkness that had convinced this young wolf she was worthless, unloved, beyond saving. Yes, Aria breathed, understanding flooding through her like liquid starlight. Yes, I can help her. She turned to Damon, who was staring at her with an expression of awe and something deeper. I'll take the contract, she said. When do we start? Chapter 4. The contract signing felt surreal. Aria sat in Damon's private study, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and the scent of old leather and pine, watching him review the final details of their agreement. Moonlight streamed through tall windows, casting silver patterns across the mahogany desk where documents worth $50 million lay waiting for her signature. The living arrangements, Damon said, his voice professionally neutral, specify that we'll share the master suite. Separate beds, of course, but the Pack needs to believe this is a genuine mating. Aria nodded, trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach at the thought of sharing space with him. And the mentorship program? 7 young wolves are currently at risk of going feral. You'll work with them individually and in groups, using whatever methods feel right to you. He looked up from the papers, his mismatched eyes serious. I won't pretend to understand how oracle abilities work. I'm trusting your instincts completely. What if I fail? What if I can't reach them? Then we try something else, Damon said simply. But I've seen what you did with Luna just by touching her door. I don't think failure is something you need to worry about. Aria picked up the silver pen, its weight substantial in her hand. 1 year. 1 year, he confirmed. At the end of which we announced that the stress of our different backgrounds proved too much for the relationship. You'll leave with enough money to do whatever you want with your life, and I'll have had time to strengthen the pack's position. It sounded so clinical, so businesslike. So, why did the thought of leaving after a year make her chest ache? She signed her name with a flourish, the ink seeming to shimmer in the moonlight. Welcome to the Midnight Moon Pack, Mrs. Silvermane, Damon said, and something in his voice made her look up sharply. For just a moment, his carefully controlled expression had slipped, revealing something that looked almost like longing. The next morning brought chaos in the form of pack politics. Aria stood in what would now be her shared bedroom, a spacious suite decorated in rich blues and silvers, trying to process Thomas Grayson's urgent briefing. The Ravencroft delegation arrived at dawn, Thomas explained grimly. Celeste brought her father, the European Alpha Council's representative, and a full diplomatic entourage. They're demanding an audience with Damon about the irregularities in his mating choice. Irregularities? Aria asked, smoothing down her new dress, an elegant emerald green number that Damon had somehow procured overnight in her exact size. You're not of Alpha bloodline, Thomas said gently. In their world, that makes you unsuitable as a mate for someone of Damon's status. They're also questioning your sudden appearance and lack of pack verification. Through the windows, Aria could see black luxury vehicles parked in the circular drive, their occupants no doubt preparing to tear apart her worthiness to be Damon's wife. Where is Damon now? Meeting with his own council, trying to prepare for what's essentially a diplomatic assault on your legitimacy. Thomas's expression softened. For what it's worth, most of our pack is thrilled. They can see how you affected Luna yesterday, and word has spread quickly. A soft knock interrupted them. Come in, Aria called. A teenage girl peered around the door, petite, with dark hair and enormous brown eyes that held far too much sadness for someone so young. Luna? Aria breathed. The girl nodded shyly. I wanted to thank you. For the first time in weeks, the darkness feels manageable. How are you feeling this morning? Like maybe I'm not completely broken, Luna said with a tremulous smile. The others want to meet you too, if that's okay. We heard about the mate bond ceremony tonight, and we wanted to ask. She hesitated. What is it? Could we be part of it? Not in a weird way, Luna added quickly. But you're going to be our Luna now, and some of us don't have families to celebrate with. Aria's throat tightened with emotion. These kids who barely knew her were already offering acceptance and belonging she'd never found in her birth pack. I would be honored, she said softly. Luna's smile was like the sunrise. I'll tell the others. Oh, and Luna Aria? Yes. That woman downstairs, the blonde one? She smells like lies and ambition. Just be careful. After Luna left, Aria caught Thomas grinning. That girl hasn't spoken to anyone in weeks, and now she's giving political advice. You really are Elena's daughter. The confrontation came sooner than expected. Aria was in the garden, trying to calm her nerves before the evening ceremony, when voices carried across the courtyard. This is preposterous, Damon, a cultured male voice was saying. A contract marriage to some packless nobody? The council will never accept it. With respect, Alpha Ravencroft, Damon's voice was dangerously quiet. The Midnight Moon Pack's internal affairs are not subject to European Council approval. Aria moved closer to the hedge that bordered the main patio, staying hidden but able to see the confrontation unfolding. Celeste stood beside an older man who could only be her father, distinguished, silver-haired, with the kind of cold authority that spoke of centuries of unquestioned power. Behind them stood several other wolves in expensive suits, all watching Damon with expressions ranging from disapproval to outright hostility. Your mate, Alpha Ravencroft practically spat the word, is a rejected wolf with no bloodline, no training, and no political value. Surely you can see the damage this does to your standing among the great packs. My mate, Damon replied, steel in his voice, is a moon oracle whose mother served this pack with distinction for years. Her bloodline is older and more powerful than any represented here. Several of the visiting wolves scoffed openly. Celeste stepped forward, her blue eyes glittering with malice. Really, Damon? You expect us to believe this little healer is one of the legendary oracles? How conveniently mythical. Shall we test that theory? A new voice asked. Aria turned to see Luna emerging from the house, followed by 6 other young wolves. The troubled teens Aria was supposed to help. They moved with purpose, surrounding the visiting delegation in a loose circle. Luna, go back inside, Damon warned, but the girl shook her head. With respect, Alpha, they're insulting our Luna, Luna said, her voice carrying new strength. We can't let that stand. These children, Alpha Ravencroft began dismissively. These children, Luna interrupted, were lost until yesterday. Feral, hopeless, beyond help according to every expert you'd care to name. But our Luna touched my spirit from across a room and brought me back from the edge of permanent madness. The visiting wolves looked skeptical until another teen stepped forward, a boy with burned scars covering half his face. I haven't been able to shift for 3 months, he said quietly. The trauma from a pack war left me broken. But when Luna Aria put her hand on my shoulder this morning, he shifted smoothly into a beautiful silver wolf, then back to human form. The transformation was flawless, showing none of the struggle that had apparently plagued him for months. One by one, each of the troubled teens demonstrated some improvement. A girl who'd been mute speaking clearly, a boy who'd been violent showing perfect control, others displaying newfound confidence and stability. Alpha Ravencroft's expression shifted from dismissive to calculating. Interesting, he murmured. Very interesting indeed. But it was Celeste's reaction that made Aria's blood run cold. The European Alpha's daughter was staring at the teens with undisguised hunger, as if she were seeing not healing but opportunity. Well, Celeste said, her voice honey-sweet with false admiration, perhaps we've underestimated your little healer, Damon. Such gifts would be quite valuable to the right pack. The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. Aria felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. The ceremony begins at sunset, Damon said, his tone making it clear the conversation was over. You're welcome to attend as guests or leave as enemies. Choose wisely. As the visiting delegation retreated toward the house, Luna moved to Aria's hiding spot. You heard all that? The girl asked quietly. Yes. The blonde woman. She's dangerous. Not just ambitious, but actually dangerous. I can sense it. Aria nodded grimly. I know. But we can't let fear stop us from doing what's right. What if she tries to hurt you? Or take you away from us? The protective fierceness in Luna's voice made Aria's heart clench. These kids had already adopted her as their own, and she'd do anything to keep them safe. Then we'll face it together, Aria said firmly. All of us. But as she watched Celeste through the window, apparently deep in conversation with her father and the other visiting alphas, Aria couldn't shake the feeling that her new life was about to become far more complicated than a simple contract marriage. The question was, would her growing feelings for Damon and his pack survive whatever storm was brewing? Chapter 5. The mate bond ceremony was unlike anything Aria had ever experienced. As sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, the midnight moon pack gathered in the ancient stone circle at the heart of their territory. Towering pine trees formed a natural cathedral around them, and the air hummed with wild magic that made her oracle abilities sing. Aria stood beside Damon at the center of the circle, wearing a flowing white dress that seemed to capture and reflect the dying light. Her mother's emerald necklace pulsed warm against her skin, and for a moment she could have sworn she felt Elena's presence, proud, protective, and deeply relieved. "Do you, Damon Silvermane," the pack's elderly shaman intoned, "take Aria Nightingale as your mate, to stand with her through shadow and flame, to protect and cherish her until the stars fall from the sky?" Damon turned to face her fully, his mismatched eyes intense in the firelight. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly across the gathering, but Aria felt like the words were meant for her alone. "I do," he said. "By moon and star, by earth and flame, I claim Aria as my mate." The shaman turned to her. "Do you, Aria Nightingale, take Damon Silvermane as your mate, to stand with him through shadow and flame, to support and honor him until the stars fall from the sky?" Aria's throat felt tight with emotion as she looked into Damon's scarred face. This was supposed to be just a contract, just politics and convenience. So why did her heart feel like it was overflowing? "I do," she whispered, then stronger. "By moon and star, by earth and flame, I claim Damon as my mate." The moment the words left her lips, something extraordinary happened. Light erupted from her emerald necklace, not harsh or blinding, but warm and silver like liquid moonlight. It flowed between them, wrapping around their joined hands and creating patterns in the air that spoke of ancient magic and timeless bonds. The pack's collective gasp echoed through the circle. Even the visiting European delegation, watching from the outer ring, seemed awed by the display. "The moon goddess herself blesses this union," the shaman announced, his voice filled with wonder. "May their bond be strong as stone and enduring as starlight." But as the light faded and the pack erupted in celebration, Aria caught sight of Celeste's expression. The European alpha's daughter wasn't looking awed or impressed. She was looking hungry, calculating, as if she'd just witnessed something she intended to possess. The reception moved to the pack house's great hall, where tables groaned under the weight of traditional foods and pack members mingled freely with their unusual guests. Aria found herself swept from conversation to conversation, accepting congratulations and trying to remember names and faces while keeping one eye on the Ravencroft delegation. "You look radiant," Thomas Grayson said, appearing at her elbow with a glass of sparkling wine. "Though I suspect that's not entirely due to the ceremony." "What do you mean?" "Your oracle abilities," he said quietly. "They're getting stronger. I can sense it, we all can. It's like you're coming into your full power." Before Aria could respond, a commotion near the main entrance caught their attention. A young wolf had burst through the doors, wild-eyed and breathing hard. "Alpha," the messenger called out. "Border Patrol reports rogue wolves moving through the Eastern Territory. They're different, organized, and they're heading this way." The festive atmosphere evaporated instantly. Damon was across the room in seconds, his alpha authority snapping into place. "How many?" he demanded. "At least 20, sir. Maybe more. They're moving in formation like soldiers." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Rogue wolves typically traveled alone or in small, chaotic groups. An organized force of 20 or more suggested something far more dangerous. "Could be mercenaries," Thomas suggested grimly. "Someone hired them." Aria felt ice forming in her stomach as she noticed Alpha Ravencroft and his delegation exchanging meaningful glances. Celeste's smile was particularly cold. "How unfortunate," Celeste said, her voice carrying just far enough to be heard by those nearby. "Such a lovely ceremony interrupted by violence. One might think someone doesn't want this union to succeed." The implication was clear. The rogue attack wasn't coincidental. "All non-combatants to the safe rooms," Damon ordered. "Security teams to your positions. This is not a drill." "I'm not going to any safe room," Aria said firmly, moving to stand beside him. "Aria." "These are my pack members now," she interrupted. "My responsibility. I won't hide while they're in danger." Damon's expression flickered between admiration and frustration. "You're not trained for combat." "No, but I'm trained for healing. And my oracle abilities might be useful." Before he could argue further, Luna appeared at Aria's side, followed by the other teens from the mentorship program. "We're staying too," Luna announced. "This is our home," our family. We fight for it." "Absolutely not," Damon started, but the sound of howls in the distance cut him off. The rogues were closer than expected. "There's no time," Thomas said urgently. "They're almost at the main gate." What happened next would be talked about in pack legend for generations. As the first wave of rogue wolves crashed against the Midnight Moon Pack's defenses, Aria discovered that her oracle abilities extended far beyond healing. Standing in the great hall with her hand pressed against the ancient stone walls, she could sense the entire battle unfolding around them. Every pack member, every attacker, every tactical movement played out in her mind like pieces on a chessboard. "Northwest Gate," she called out to Thomas, her eyes still closed in concentration. "They're trying to flank us. Send reinforcements." "How can you possibly trust her?" Damon growled, then spoke into his radio. "Delta team to Northwest Gate. Immediate reinforcement needed." Minutes later, Thomas's radio crackled with confirmation. "Flanking attack neutralized." "How did you know?" But Aria was already focused on the next threat. "The safe rooms," she gasped. "Someone's heading for the safe rooms. Not rogues, someone from inside." Damon's blood went cold. The safe rooms housed the pack's most vulnerable members: elderly wolves, pregnant females, young children. "Who?" he demanded. Aria's emerald necklace flared brighter as she pushed her newfound abilities to their limit. Images flashed through her mind: expensive shoes moving through shadowy corridors, a familiar scent, the glint of silver in manicured hands. "Celeste," she breathed. "She's using the attack as cover. She's after the children." Without hesitation, Damon shifted into his massive black wolf form and raced toward the safe rooms. Aria started to follow, but a firm hand caught her arm. "Where do you think you're going?" Alpha Ravencroft stood behind her, his grip iron strong. His earlier diplomatic facade had vanished, replaced by something cold and predatory. "Let go of me," Aria said, power building in her voice. "I think not," Ravencroft replied smoothly. "You're far too valuable to be running around unprotected. My daughter has gone to quite a lot of trouble to arrange this little demonstration of your abilities." The truth hit her like a physical blow. "You orchestrated this. The rogue attack, everything, it was to test my powers." "To confirm them," Ravencroft corrected. "A moon oracle is a weapon beyond price, child. Did you really think we'd let you waste away in some backwater American pack?" Aria felt her oracle abilities surge in response to the threat, silver light beginning to build around her hands. But before she could act, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Step away from our Luna." Luna stood in the doorway, no longer the broken, frightened girl from just days ago. Behind her stood the other teens, their eyes blazing with protective fury. "Now this is interesting," Ravencroft mused. "The broken children, so quickly healed. Tell me, little wolves, what would you do to protect your precious oracle?" Luna's smile was sharp as moonlight on steel. "Why don't you find out?" What followed was a battle that had nothing to do with claws and fangs and everything to do with will, loyalty, and the kind of love that transforms ordinary wolves into something extraordinary. But as silver light exploded through the great hall and the sounds of combat echoed from the safe rooms, one question burned in Aria's mind. Would they reach Celeste in time to stop whatever she had planned for the pack's most innocent members? Chapter 6. The power that erupted from Aria wasn't like anything the werewolf world had seen in centuries. Silver light poured from her emerald necklace, but instead of the gentle healing glow from the ceremony, this was raw oracle magic, ancient, protective, and absolutely furious. Alpha Ravencroft's grip on her arm released instantly as he stumbled backward, his eyes wide with shock. "Impossible," he breathed. "No oracle has wielded that level of power since." "Since my mother protected this pack from wolves exactly like you," Aria finished, her voice resonating with otherworldly authority. The silver light swirled around her like living armor, and suddenly she could see everything. Every rogue wolf on the property, every pack member fighting for their lives, and most importantly, Celeste's exact location in the safe room corridors. "Luna," Aria called to the teens, her voice carrying clearly despite the chaos. "I need you to get to the northwest corridor.
Now.
Without hesitation, Luna and the other teens shifted into their wolf forms, their movements smooth and powerful in ways that had been impossible just days before. They raced toward the safe rooms while Aria turned her attention to the European alpha blocking her path. "You made a serious mistake tonight," she told Ravencroft, power crackling in the air around them. "You threaten children under my protection." "You're just one oracle against an entire delegation," Ravencroft snarled, but she could smell his fear beneath the bravado. "Am I?" Aria smiled, and it wasn't entirely human. "Look around you." Ravencroft turned to see his carefully placed allies backing away in terror. The silver light radiating from Aria wasn't just protecting her, it was revealing the truth. And the truth was that several of his diplomatic wolves were carrying weapons intended for kidnapping, not defense. But Aria's primary focus was on the mental connection she'd established with Damon through her oracle abilities. She could see through his eyes as he raced through the corridors, could feel his desperate urgency to reach the safe rooms before Celeste could harm any innocents. "Third door on the left," she projected to him. "She has 2 accomplices and silver restraints. Stay safe," came his fierce mental response. "I'll handle this." "We'll handle this," she corrected, then did something that would have been impossible before her powers fully awakened. She projected her consciousness into the safe room itself. Celeste stood in the children's area, a silver-tipped dart gun in her hands, while terrified pack youngsters huddled behind overturned furniture. 2 male wolves flanked her, their eyes cold and professional. Now, Celeste was saying in a sickeningly sweet voice. "No one needs to get hurt. We just need 1 or 2 of the little ones to ensure the Oracle's cooperation." A 5-year-old girl with dark curls peeked out from behind a chair, tears streaming down her face. "I want my mama," she whimpered. "Soon, darling," Celeste replied, raising the dart gun. "Soon." That's when Aria's projection became physical reality. Silver light exploded into the safe room as Aria's oracle spirit manifested, placing herself between Celeste and the children. The European Alpha's daughter stumbled backward in shock. "You," Celeste snarled. "How are you here? You're supposed to be contained." "I'm exactly where I need to be," Aria replied, her projection form radiating protective power. "And you're exactly where you don't belong." Celeste fired the dart gun, but the silver-tipped projectile dissolved before it could reach Aria's form. Impossible. Those darts were specifically designed to neutralize oracle magic. Designed by people who fundamentally misunderstand what oracle magic actually is, Aria said, moving closer. "It's not just power, Celeste. It's a connection.
Love.
Protection of those who can't protect themselves." The 2 male wolves moved to flank Aria's projection, but that's when Damon burst through the door in his human form, his eyes blazing with alpha fury. "Stand down," he commanded, his voice carrying the full weight of his authority.
Now.
But Celeste was beyond reason. "You could have had everything," she screamed at Damon. "Wealth, power, political connections across 3 continents. Instead you chose some packless nobody with delusions of magical grandeur." "I chose a woman who would sacrifice herself for children she barely knows," Damon replied coldly. "Which tells me everything I need to know about both of you." The confrontation might have escalated further, but Luna and the other teens arrived in a rush of protective fury. They'd heard Celeste threatening the little ones, and their response was swift and decisive. What followed wasn't really a fight. It was a demonstration of what happened when wolves motivated by love faced off against those motivated by greed. Within minutes, Celeste and her accomplices were subdued and restrained. But the night's revelations weren't over. As pack security took the prisoners away, Alpha Ravencroft appeared in the doorway, his earlier antagonism replaced by something that looked almost like fear. "The rogue attack has been repelled," he announced stiffly. "My wolves will be withdrawing." "Not all of them," Damon said with deadly quiet. "Some of them were carrying weapons intended for kidnapping. They'll be staying to face pack justice." "You can't hold European wolves without proper diplomatic." "I can hold criminals," Damon interrupted, "regardless of their origin." Ravencroft's jaw clenched, but he nodded tersely. "Very well. But this won't end here, Silvermane. There are forces at play larger than your little pack. Then they'll learn the same lesson you did tonight, Aria said, her oracle abilities still shimmering around her. Some things can't be bought, stolen, or conquered. After the delegation's humiliating departure, the pack house gradually returned to some semblance of normalcy. The wounded were treated, security was reinforced, and the children were returned to their grateful families. Aria found herself in the garden near dawn, exhaustion finally catching up with her as the adrenaline faded. Her oracle abilities had receded to their normal gentle warmth, but she could still feel the echo of that incredible power. "You saved them," Damon said, appearing beside her with 2 cups of coffee. He looked as tired as she felt, but there was something new in his expression, a depth of admiration and gratitude that made her heart skip. "We saved them," she corrected, accepting the coffee gratefully. "I couldn't have reached the safe rooms without you, and the teens couldn't have stopped Celeste's accomplices without their training." "About that," Damon said, settling beside her on the garden bench. "What you did tonight, projecting your consciousness across the compound, I've never heard of an oracle with that level of ability." "Neither have I," Aria admitted. "I think being here, being part of a pack that accepts me, it's unlocking things I never knew were possible." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The events of the night felt almost dreamlike now, but the changes they'd brought were very real. "The teens," Aria said eventually. "They were incredible tonight. Brave, coordinated, protective. They're nothing like the broken wolves who arrived here." "That's because they found something worth fighting for," Damon replied, his mismatched eyes meeting hers. "Something worth healing for." The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken feelings and growing awareness. This was supposed to be a contract marriage, a business arrangement. But sitting here in the dawnlight, having faced danger together and protected their pack together, it felt like something much more profound. "Damon," Aria began, but before she could continue, Luna appeared on the garden path. "Sorry to interrupt," the teenager said, though her grin suggested she wasn't sorry at all. "But the pack's asking for both of you. Something about a proper celebration now that the excitement's over." As they walked back toward the pack house together, Aria couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed tonight. Not just her powers, not just the pack's dynamics, but something fundamental about her relationship with the scarred alpha walking beside her. The question was, what did she plan to do about it? Chapter 7. 3 weeks had passed since the night of the attack, and life at the Midnight Moon Pack had settled into a new rhythm. Aria stood in the mentorship center, a converted wing of the pack house that now served as headquarters for her work with troubled wolves, watching Luna lead a group discussion with 5 newcomers. "The thing about being different," Luna was saying to the younger wolves, "is that different doesn't mean broken. It just means you haven't found your pack yet." Aria smiled, remembering the terrified, silver-eyed girl who'd barely been able to speak just a month ago. Now Luna was thriving in her role as peer counselor, helping other young wolves navigate their own struggles with pack dynamics and self-worth. "Luna's right," added Marcus, the scarred boy who'd been unable to shift. "I spent months thinking I was worthless because trauma broke my wolf. But our Luna taught me that healing isn't about becoming who you were before, it's about becoming who you're meant to be." The discussion was interrupted by a soft knock. Thomas Grayson peered around the door, his expression troubled. "Aria? Could I speak with you privately?" She nodded, leaving the teens to continue their session. In the hallway, Thomas's concern was more apparent. "We've received word from the Continental Pack Council," he said quietly. "They're sending an official investigator to review what happened with the Ravencroft delegation." Aria's stomach dropped. "What kind of investigation?" "The kind that questions whether a newly awakened oracle poses a threat to pack stability," Thomas replied grimly. "Apparently, Ravencroft filed a formal complaint claiming you used dangerous magical coercion against diplomatic guests." "That's ridiculous. I was protecting children." "I know that, and Damon knows that, but politics in the werewolf world are complicated. The investigator arrives tomorrow." That evening, Aria found herself pacing the master suite while Damon reviewed intelligence reports at his desk. They'd fallen into an easy cohabitation over the past weeks, separate beds as agreed, but increasing comfort with each other's presence. Sometimes she caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read, and sometimes she caught herself doing the same. "Nervous about tomorrow?" he asked without looking up from his papers. "Terrified," she admitted. "What if they decide I'm too dangerous? What if they try to separate me from the pack?" Damon finally looked up, his mismatched eyes serious. "That won't happen. You can't guarantee that." "I can guarantee that I won't let anyone take you away from here." The fierce certainty in his voice made her heart skip. "You're part of this pack now, Aria.
Part of this family.
We protect our own." The weight of his words settled between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to address directly. "The teens are worried too," Aria said, deflecting from the emotional intensity. "They know something's wrong." "They're stronger because of you," Damon replied. "Whatever this investigator throws at us, we'll face it together." The investigator arrived the next morning in the form of Elena Blackthorne, no relation to Aria's former alpha, but equally intimidating in her own way. She was a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and pale blue eyes that seemed to see everything. Her reputation for fairness was matched only by her reputation for ruthlessness when she discovered deception. "Alpha Silvermane," she said formally as she stepped from her official vehicle. "Mrs. Silvermane, I trust you understand the seriousness of the accusations brought against your pack." "We understand them," Damon replied carefully. "We also understand their politically motivated lies." "That remains to be determined." Blackthorne's gaze settled on Aria with uncomfortable intensity. "I'll need to interview all parties involved, review the physical evidence, and conduct my own assessment of the Oracle's abilities." The interviews began immediately. One by one, pack members were called to give their accounts of the night's events. Aria listened from the adjacent room as Luna, Marcus, and the other teens spoke passionately about how she'd saved them, how her healing abilities had transformed their lives. But it was Thomas's testimony that surprised her most. "The Oracle's mother, Aria Nightingale, served our pack for nearly a decade," he was saying. "She was the strongest, most ethical magical practitioner I've ever encountered. Her daughter demonstrates the same qualities, power tempered by compassion, strength guided by wisdom." Yet witnesses report that Mrs. Silvermane displayed unprecedented levels of magical force, Blackthorne replied. "Power that, according to Alpha Ravencroft, felt coercive and threatening." Witnesses also report that she used that power to protect children from armed kidnappers, Thomas countered. "If that's threatening, then perhaps Alpha Ravencroft should examine his own moral compass." When Aria's turn came, she found herself facing Blackthorne across a conference table, feeling like a defendant in a trial she didn't understand. "Tell me about your abilities," Blackthorne said without preamble. "I can heal physical and emotional wounds," Aria replied carefully. "I can sense spiritual distress in others and help guide them toward recovery. Sometimes I have prophetic dreams or visions." "And the consciousness projection you demonstrated during the attack?" Aria hesitated. "That was new. I'd never done anything like it before." "What triggered it?" "Children were in danger. I had to help them." Blackthorne made notes in a leather portfolio. "Alpha Ravencroft claims you used magical coercion to force his cooperation. Is this true?" "I revealed the truth about his intentions," Aria said firmly. "If he experienced that as coercive, perhaps he should consider why honesty made him so uncomfortable." A slight smile tugged at Blackthorne's lips. "Interesting perspective. And the silver light that manifested during your ceremony?" "I don't control it," Aria admitted. "It seems to respond to strong emotion, joy, fear, protective instincts." "Do you consider yourself dangerous?" The question hung in the air like a trap. Aria thought carefully before answering. "I consider myself responsible," she said finally. "Dangerous to those who would hurt innocents? I hope so. Dangerous to those who treat me with respect and kindness? Never." Blackthorne's expression remained neutral, but something in her pale eyes suggested approval. The investigation continued for 3 days, with Blackthorne examining every aspect of the attack, interviewing dozens of witnesses, and conducting what she called magical assessments that involved monitoring Aria while she worked with the troubled teens. It was during one of these sessions that everything changed. Aria was working with a new arrival, a 12-year-old boy named River whose parents had been killed in a rogue attack. He hadn't spoken since the trauma, and his wolf was so deeply buried that the pack doctor worried he might never shift again. "It's okay," Aria said gently, kneeling beside where River sat curled in a corner. "You don't have to talk. Just let me sit with you." She began humming softly, a lullaby her mother used to sing, while letting her oracle abilities flow gently around the traumatized child. She wasn't trying to force healing, just offering comfort and safety. That's when Blackthorn gasped. Aria looked up to see the investigators staring with wide eyes as silver light danced around them, but this time it wasn't coming from Aria's necklace. It was coming from River himself, as his own dormant magical abilities awakened in response to her presence. "Impossible," Blackthorn breathed. "He's not Oracle-born. How is he channeling?" She never finished the question, because River suddenly looked up at Aria with clear, focused eyes and spoke his first words in months. "You're like my mama was." She made the hurt stop too. The implications hit everyone in the room simultaneously. River's mother hadn't been just a pack healer. She'd been an oracle too, probably untrained and unrecognized, killed before she could fully develop her abilities. "There are more of us," Aria whispered, the revelation shaking her to her core. Hidden, untrained, scattered across different packs. Blackthorn slowly closed her portfolio and stood. "Mrs. Silvermane, I believe we need to have a very different conversation about your future." But before that conversation could begin, the pack house's emergency alarms began to wail, and Thomas's voice echoed through the intercom system. "All hands to defensive positions. We have incoming hostiles, and they're not rogues this time. Someone sent professional mercenaries." Through the windows, Aria could see black helicopters approaching through the forest, their intention unmistakably hostile. "It seems," Blackthorn said grimly, "that certain parties aren't willing to wait for my investigation to conclude." Chapter 8. The attack was unlike anything the Midnight Moon Pack had ever faced. These weren't desperate rogues, or even organized mercenaries, they were military precision. Black-clad figures rappelled from helicopters with supernatural speed and coordination, moving with the deadly efficiency of trained killers. "Silver nets," Thomas reported grimly over the radio as pack defenders engaged the invaders throughout the territory. "They're specifically equipped to capture, not kill." Aria's blood ran cold. This wasn't a random assault, it was a targeted extraction operation. "They're after you," Blackthorn said, her investigator's neutrality replaced by protective urgency. "Someone wants you taken alive." In the mentorship center, Luna and the other teens had automatically moved to defensive positions around the younger children, including River. Their transformation from broken outcasts to fierce protectors was remarkable, but Aria couldn't let them face professional killers. "Take the children to the deep bunkers," she told Luna. "Use the old mining tunnels, they won't know about those." "What about you?" Luna demanded, her eyes flashing with stubborn loyalty. "I'll be fine," Aria lied.
Go. Now.
Damon burst into the room in partial shift, claws extended, eyes blazing with alpha fury. "North and east perimeters are compromised," he reported. "They're herding us toward the center of the territory." "It's a trap," Blackthorn observed. "They want to isolate the Oracle." Through the windows, Aria could see the systematic advance of the attackers. They moved like a closing net, forcing the pack's defenders into an increasingly small area around the main compound. "We need to get you out of here," Damon said, reaching for her hand.
No.
Aria pulled away, surprising everyone. "That's what they want. Me running scared, isolated, vulnerable. But I'm not running anymore." Her mother's emerald necklace began to pulse with increasing intensity, responding to her rising determination. Around them, the air itself seemed to thicken with magical potential. "Aria," Damon warned, recognizing the signs of her power building. "These people think they can hunt my pack, threaten children under my protection, treat us like prey to be captured," she said, silver light beginning to dance around her hands. They're about to learn why moon oracles were once revered and feared in equal measure. What happened next would be whispered about in supernatural circles for decades to come. Instead of projecting her consciousness or manifesting defensive barriers, Aria did something that had been considered impossible since ancient times. She connected her oracle abilities to every wolf in the pack simultaneously. The pack bond, which normally only existed between mates or close family members, suddenly expanded to encompass every member of the Midnight Moon Pack. Aria became the central point of a vast network of shared strength, knowledge, and tactical awareness. "Can you hear me?" Her voice echoed directly into the minds of every pack member. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of mental voices confirming the connection, sharing battle information, coordinating defensive strategies with supernatural precision. Through Luna's eyes, she saw the children safely reaching the old mining tunnels. Through Thomas's perspective, she tracked the movement of the attacking forces. Through Damon's heightened senses, she detected the scent signatures of their enemies. But it was through Marcus's tactical mind that she understood the true scope of the threat they faced. 15 teams of 4, Marcus reported through the mental link. Professional equipment, supernatural enhancement drugs, and something else, they smell wrong. Like they're not entirely human anymore. Enhanced soldiers, Blackthorn said grimly, somehow able to sense the pack communication despite not being connected. Someone's been experimenting with forced supernatural transformations. The implication was terrifying. These weren't just mercenaries. They were artificially created super soldiers designed specifically to hunt and capture supernatural beings. "Then we fight like wolves," Aria projected to her pack, power building to levels that made the air itself hum with energy.
Together.
Coordinated. Unstoppable. What followed was a battle that redefined what werewolf pack tactics could accomplish. With Aria serving as a central nervous system, the Midnight Moon Pack fought with perfect coordination. Every movement was anticipated, every attack coordinated, every defensive position optimized. The enhanced soldiers, for all their artificial improvements, couldn't compete with genuine supernatural instincts guided by oracle-enhanced tactical awareness. But the real shock came when one of the enemy teams cornered River and several other children in the mining tunnels. The 12-year-old boy who'd barely spoken in months stepped forward, his own dormant oracle abilities fully awakening in response to the threat. Silver light erupted from his small hands, and suddenly the attacking soldiers found themselves facing not a traumatized child, but a manifestation of protective fury that had been building since his parents' deaths. "Nobody hurts my family," River declared, his voice carrying power that should have been impossible at his age. The soldiers' enhanced reflexes and artificial strength meant nothing against oracle magic guided by absolute moral conviction. They fell unconscious without River even touching them. Across the pack link, Aria felt similar awakenings. Other hidden oracle children were manifesting abilities they'd never known they possessed, their powers activated by the life or death need to protect their pack family. "How many?" Blackthorn whispered in awe as she witnessed the phenomenon. "At least 6 confirmed," Aria replied, her own power serving as a stabilizing force for the newly awakened children. "Maybe more." The battle turned decisively in the pack's favor as these young oracles added their abilities to the collective defense. What had been intended as a surgical extraction became a rout, with enhanced soldiers retreating in confusion and fear. But their victory celebration was cut short by the arrival of someone Aria had hoped never to see again. A new helicopter descended into the pack's central courtyard, and from it stepped a figure that made Damon growl with recognition, and Aria's blood freeze with terror. It was her former mate, Caden Ashworth. But he was changed, bigger, stronger, with an artificial scent that spoke of the same enhancement procedures used on the soldiers. His eyes, once warm brown, now glowed with an unnatural amber light. "Hello, Aria," he called out, his voice carrying clearly across the compound. "Miss me?" Behind him emerged another familiar figure, Valentina Cross, the warrior who'd replaced Aria as Caden's mate. She too showed signs of supernatural enhancement, her already impressive physique now radiating predatory power. "You see," Caden continued. When we heard about your little magical awakening, we realized we'd made a mistake. The Crimson Ridge Pack could use a moon oracle, especially one who can create other oracles. I'm not going anywhere with you, Aria called back, her pack bond still connecting her to every midnight moon wolf on the territory. Oh, but you are, Valentina interjected with a cold smile. Because we have something you'll want to see. They stepped aside, revealing a third passenger from the helicopter, a small figure with familiar auburn hair and green eyes. Mira? Aria gasped, recognizing her former best friend. But Mira looked different, hollow-eyed, scared, with the unmistakable scent of silver poisoning. They've been dosing her with liquid silver for weeks, Caden explained casually, keeping her wolf suppressed, making her weak and compliant. She'll die without proper treatment within the next few hours. But, Valentina added with theatrical sweetness, we'll be happy to provide that treatment in exchange for your voluntary cooperation. Aria felt her pack's collective rage through the bond, dozens of wolves ready to tear apart anyone who would poison an innocent to manipulate her. But she also felt their absolute trust in whatever decision she made. The choice seemed impossible: abandon her new family to save her old friend, or watch Mira die to protect the pack that had given her everything. But as she stood there, feeling the power of 6 newly awakened oracle children flowing through her enhanced pack bond, Aria realized there was a third option. One that would change the supernatural world forever. Chapter 9. You're making this too complicated, Aria said, her voice carrying across the courtyard with supernatural clarity. The pack bond hummed with power as she stepped forward, silver light beginning to build around her hands. You want to trade Myra's life for my cooperation? Fine. But let's discuss the actual terms. Caden's enhanced features twisted into a smug smile. Now you're being reasonable. Am I? Aria's power surge intensified, and suddenly every oracle child on the territory felt their abilities amplify through their connection to her. Because what I'm actually proposing is that you release Mira immediately, leave our territory, and never threaten anyone under my protection again. Valentina laughed, a harsh sound that held no humor. Or what? You'll sparkle at us menacingly? Or I'll show you why ancient texts describe moon oracles as forces of nature rather than simple healers. What Aria did next had never been attempted in recorded oracle history. Instead of projecting her consciousness or manifesting defensive barriers, she reached out through the pack bond and connected not just to her wolves, but to the very land itself. The Midnight Moon territory had been home to her mother's people for generations. Every tree, every stone, every stream carried the residual magic of oracles who had lived, loved, and died protecting this sacred ground. That accumulated power had been dormant for decades, waiting for someone strong enough to awaken it. Aria was strong enough. The ground beneath Caden's feet began to glow with soft silver light. Ancient runes carved into bedrock centuries ago flared to life, and suddenly the enhanced wolf found himself standing in the center of a magical circle that made his artificial improvements feel like pale shadows. Impossible, he breathed, his enhanced senses overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of power rising around him. You never understood what I was, Aria said, her voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to come from the earth itself. You saw weakness where there was restraint. You mistook gentleness for fragility. You threw away something precious because you couldn't recognize its value. Through the pack bond, she felt Damon's fierce pride, Luna's protective fury, and the absolute trust of every pack member on the territory. But most importantly, she felt the awakening excitement of 6 oracle children finally understanding what they were capable of. Mira, she called out, her power flowing across the courtyard to touch her poisoned friend. Can you hear me? Myra's head lifted slowly, her green eyes focusing with difficulty. Aria? Is that really you? It's me. And I'm going to help you, but I need you to be brave for just a little longer. Instead of trying to heal Mira from a distance, which would have been impossible with silver poisoning, Aria did something far more elegant. She reached through her oracle abilities to the very molecules of silver in Myra's bloodstream and convinced them to transform. Silver, in its pure state, was toxic to werewolves. But silver bound with certain organic compounds became harmless, even beneficial. With oracle magic guiding the chemical transformation, the poison became medicine, the toxin became treatment. Mira gasped as color returned to her cheeks and strength flowed back into her limbs. "How did you?" "I learned some new tricks," Aria replied, never taking her eyes off Caden and Valentina. "Now run. Get behind our lines." But Mira, despite her recent ordeal, had always been brave. Instead of fleeing to safety, she shifted into her wolf form and positioned herself between her friend and the enhanced predators. "Stand together," she projected through the pack bond that Aria immediately extended to include her. Family doesn't abandon family. That's when everything changed. The sight of Mira, poisoned, tortured, but still willing to fight for her friend, triggered something primal in every pack member present. The bond that Aria had created between them transformed from a tactical advantage into something far more powerful, a manifestation of pure protective love. Silver light erupted from every wolf connected to the bond, creating a network of power that turned individual pack members into extensions of a single, unstoppable force. But it wasn't just the adult wolves. The Oracle children added their own unique abilities to the collective, their innocent fury at seeing someone hurt their family creating magical effects that defied explanation. River, the traumatized 12-year-old who'd barely spoken days before, stepped forward with silver fire dancing around his small hands. "You hurt my friend's friend," he said simply. "That makes you bad people. Bad people don't get to win." What followed wasn't really a fight. It was a demonstration of what happened when enhanced artificial strength met genuine supernatural power backed by absolute moral conviction. Caden and Valentina, for all their chemical improvements and military training, found themselves facing opponents who were connected in ways they couldn't comprehend. Every move they made was anticipated, every attack countered, every tactical advantage neutralized by the combined awareness of an entire pack. But the real revelation came when Caden, in desperation, lunged directly at Aria with claws designed to penetrate oracle defenses. Damon intercepted him mid-leap, and the collision between enhanced wolf and protective alpha sent shockwaves through the courtyard. As they fought, Caden's artificial strength against Damon's natural power, something extraordinary happened. The mate bond that had been building between Aria and Damon suddenly crystallized into something far beyond a contract marriage. Real, deep, soul-deep connection flared between them, and through that bond, Aria's oracle abilities flowed into Damon himself. For the first time in werewolf history, a non-oracle began manifesting oracle powers. Silver light erupted from Damon's scarred hands as he grappled with Caden, but this wasn't just defensive magic, it was transformative. The artificial enhancements in Caden's system began breaking down, the chemical improvements dissolving under the influence of purifying oracle magic. "No!" Caden screamed as his enhanced strength faded, leaving him facing Damon's natural alpha power with nothing but his own inadequate abilities. "This isn't possible. Oracles can't share their powers." "They can," Blackthorn said quietly from where she'd been observing the entire confrontation, "when the bond between them is strong enough. When the love is real enough." Love. The word hung in the air between Aria and Damon as they stood together, silver light still dancing around their joined hands, their pack bond extending to encompass not just the midnight moon wolves, but also Mira and the visiting investigator. "I love you," Aria said, the words coming out before she could stop them. "This was supposed to be just a contract, but I love you." "I love you too," Damon replied, his mismatched eyes soft with wonder. "More than I thought I could love anything again." The power surge that followed their mutual declaration sent Caden and Valentina stumbling backward in terror. They'd come expecting to capture a valuable but naive oracle. Instead, they discovered something that threatened the very foundation of supernatural power structures. "Retreat," Valentina shouted, grabbing Caden's arm. "We can't fight this." As their helicopter lifted off in panicked flight, Aria felt the aftermath of what they'd accomplished settling over the pack like a warm blanket. The Oracle children were safely integrated into the pack bond. Mira was healed and accepted, and the threat had been neutralized without anyone being seriously injured. But looking around at the faces of her pack, her family, Aria realized the night had brought changes that went far beyond defeating their enemies. "So," Luna said with a grin, "does this mean we get to plan a real wedding now? Because that contract ceremony was nice, but this calls for something special." As laughter rippled through the pack bond and Damon's arms tightened around her, Aria couldn't help but smile. They faced professional killers, transformed silver poisoning into healing magic, awakened hidden oracle abilities in 6 children, and discovered that true love could literally change the supernatural world. But they still had one more challenge to face, explaining all of this to the Continental Pack Council. Chapter 10. The Continental Pack Council's emergency session convened 3 days later in the neutral territory of Granite Falls, a massive conference facility built specifically for supernatural diplomatic gatherings. Aria sat beside Damon at the defendant's table, trying to project confidence while facing a panel of 12 of the most powerful alphas in North America. Investigator Blackthorn had submitted her report, but the events following the attack had complicated everything. The council wasn't just reviewing one oracle's use of defensive magic anymore. They were confronting evidence of abilities that challenged fundamental assumptions about supernatural power structures. The charges, announced Council Chairman Morrison, a grizzled alpha whose pack controlled most of the Pacific Northwest, have expanded beyond the original complaint. "We're now investigating unauthorized magical experimentation, potential threats to pack sovereignty, and the creation of what amounts to a supernatural weapon." A weapon. Damon's voice carried dangerous undertones. "You're calling our pack bond a weapon? An oracle who can share abilities with non-oracles, create pack-wide mental networks, and awaken dormant powers in children," Morrison replied coldly. "Yes, Alpha Silvermane. That constitutes a weapon." Aria felt the absence of her pack bond keenly. The council had required her to suppress the connection during the proceedings, leaving her feeling isolated and vulnerable for the first time in weeks. "If I may," Blackthorn interjected from her position as expert witness, "the oracle's actions were consistently defensive and protective. At no point did she use her abilities for aggression or conquest." "Intent is irrelevant," snapped Alpha Ravencroft, who had somehow managed to secure a seat on this emergency council despite his recent disgrace. "Power of this magnitude requires oversight, regulation, control." Aria's hands clenched in her lap as she felt her oracle abilities respond to her rising anger. The emerald necklace at her throat grew warm, but she forced herself to remain calm. "May I speak?" she asked. Morrison nodded curtly. "The floor recognizes Aria Silvermane." She stood, aware that every eye in the massive chamber was focused on her. In the gallery, she could see representatives from dozens of packs, media outlets, and supernatural organizations. Whatever she said here would shape Oracle Pack relations for generations. "You're afraid of me," she said simply. "Not because of what I've done, but because of what I represent."
Change.
Evolution. The possibility that power doesn't have to come from dominance and control. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Alpha Ravencroft's face flushed with anger. "I awakened abilities in 6 children who had been written off as damaged or hopeless," Aria continued. "I created bonds that made my pack stronger and more unified. I defended innocent lives against professional killers. If that makes me dangerous, then perhaps the council should examine what it's really trying to protect." "You're threatening the natural order," Ravencroft snarled, half rising from his seat. "Oracles serve packs, not the other way around. They heal and guide. They don't usurp alpha authority." "I married an alpha," Aria replied calmly. "I've never challenged his authority, only supported and strengthened it." "A contract marriage," Morrison pointed out. "Hardly a genuine mate bond." That's when Damon stood, his presence immediately commanding attention. "Chairman Morrison, with respect, you're operating on outdated information." He reached for Aria's hand, and the moment their skin touched, silver light flickered between their fingers. The mate bond, real, deep, and unmistakably genuine, pulsed with visible energy. The contract marriage became a true mate bond 3 days ago, Damon announced. Witnessed by my entire pack, Investigator Blackthorn, and documented in her official report. The reaction was immediate and intense. Some council members looked intrigued, others appeared horrified, and Ravencroft's expression promised future violence. This proves nothing, he declared. If anything, it demonstrates how dangerous Oracle influence can be. She's manipulated one of our strongest alphas into. Careful. Damon's voice dropped to a growl that made several council members step back instinctively. You're discussing my mate. Choose your words wisely. Before Ravencroft could respond, the chamber doors burst open. Thomas Grayson strode in, his usually calm demeanor replaced by urgent concern. Chairman Morrison, he called out, I need to present emergency evidence to this council. Beta Grayson, these proceedings are being watched by parties who have a vested interest in seeing the Oracle discredited, Thomas interrupted. We've identified the source of the enhanced soldiers who attacked our territory. He activated a wall screen that displayed surveillance footage, financial records, and communication intercepts. Biotech Industries, he announced, a subsidiary of Ravencroft International. They've been developing supernatural enhancement serums and needed test subjects to refine their formulas. The implications hit the chamber like a thunderbolt. Alpha Ravencroft owned the company that had created the enhanced soldiers used to attack the Midnight Moon Pack. The enhanced wolves, including Aria's former mate Caden Ashworth, were test subjects for a serum designed to artificially replicate Oracle abilities. Thomas continued relentlessly. When they learned that Aria had awakened genuine Oracle powers, they needed her as a baseline for their research. These accusations are preposterous. Ravencroft sputtered, but his scent betrayed his fear. Are they? Blackthorn stood, her investigator's authority cutting through the chaos. Because I've spent the last 3 days reviewing the evidence Beta Grayson provided. The financial trails, the communication records, the genetic material used in the enhancement serums, it all leads back to you, Ravencroft. The council chamber erupted in angry voices as the true scope of Ravencroft's crimes became clear. He hadn't just orchestrated an attack on a sovereign pack, he'd been conducting illegal supernatural experimentation and had used council proceedings to target his victims. Furthermore, Blackthorn continued once order was restored. My investigation has revealed that Oracle abilities are not anomalies to be controlled, but natural evolutionary adaptations. The supernatural world is changing, and oracles like Aria represent the future of our species. What are you recommending? Morrison asked, his earlier hostility replaced by careful consideration. Full exoneration for Aria Silvermane and her pack, Blackthorn replied without hesitation. Official recognition of Oracle rights and autonomy. An immediate investigation into Ravencroft's illegal activities. But before Morrison could respond, Ravencroft played his final card. You think this ends here? He snarled, rising from his seat as security moved to restrain him. There are others who share my concerns. The European Council, the Asian Confederation, supernatural powers you can't imagine. They won't allow an oracle to upset the balance of power. Then they'll have to go through me first, Damon said quietly, but his words carried to every corner of the chamber. Through all of us came a voice from the gallery. Aria turned to see Luna standing in the visitors section, flanked by the other Oracle children and supported by what looked like representatives from dozens of different packs. The Midnight Moon Pack isn't alone in this, Luna announced with the confidence of someone far older than her 16 years. Word has spread about what Luna Aria accomplished. Packs across 3 continents are asking for Oracle guidance. Children with dormant abilities are awakening. The change has already begun. As security finally escorted Ravencroft from the chamber, Morrison surveyed the transformed political landscape. It appears, he said slowly, that we're witnessing the beginning of a new era in supernatural relations. He turned to Aria, his expression thoughtful rather than hostile. The council will vote on Investigator Blackthorn's recommendations, he announced. But I suspect the outcome is no longer in question. As the session adjourned and delegates began filing out, Aria felt Damon's hand squeeze hers. Think they'll actually vote in our favor? She asked quietly. They'll vote for survival, he replied. And right now, that means accepting change rather than fighting it. But as they left the chamber together, Aria couldn't shake Ravencroft's parting words. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but the larger battle for Oracle acceptance was just beginning. The question was, were they ready for what came next? Chapter 11. 6 months after the council vote, which had passed unanimously in their favor, Aria stood in the newly constructed Oracle Training Center, watching Luna work with a group of young wolves who'd traveled from as far as Alaska to learn about their emerging abilities. The center was a marvel of modern architecture blended with ancient magical design, its crystal windows and silver-inlaid floors creating optimal conditions for Oracle development. Remember, Luna was saying to a nervous 8-year-old whose healing touch had accidentally awakened during a playground accident, your gift isn't something to be afraid of. It's part of who you are, like having brown eyes or being left-handed. Aria smiled, remembering when Luna had been the one too scared to speak, too damaged to hope. Now she was one of their most gifted instructors, her natural empathy making her perfect for working with newly manifested Oracle children. The morning session went well, Mira observed, joining Aria at the observation window. Her best friend had become the center's administrative director, her organizational skills and insider knowledge of pack politics proving invaluable. Better than well, Aria replied. That little girl from the Northern Territories managed her first successful emotional healing yesterday. Her parents are over the moon. The transformation of the supernatural world over the past months has been remarkable. What started as persecution of a single oracle had evolved into a network of training centers, support groups, and advocacy organizations spanning 3 continents. Oracle children were no longer hidden or ashamed. They were celebrated and properly educated. Any word from the European delegation? Mira asked. Aria's expression darkened slightly. They're still evaluating our request for diplomatic recognition, which means they're trying to figure out how to exploit Oracle abilities for their own purposes. The political situation remained complicated. While North American packs had embraced the new reality, other supernatural powers were less accommodating. The European Council still viewed oracles as resources to be managed rather than individuals to be respected. They'll come around, Mira said confidently. They can't ignore the benefits forever. Through the training center's windows, Aria could see the main Midnight Moon Pack compound where normal life continued. The pack had grown significantly over the months, with wolves from dozens of territories requesting transfers to be part of the first Oracle integrated community. A familiar mental touch drew her attention, Damon's consciousness brushing against hers through their mate bond. Even after all this time, the connection still made her pulse quicken. Council meeting in 10 minutes, his voice whispered in her mind. We have news. Good news or complicated news? She replied.
Both.
Aria exchanged glances with Mira. Duty calls. The Pack Council chamber had been expanded to accommodate their larger numbers, but it still maintained the warm, wood-paneled atmosphere that made it feel like a family meeting rather than a corporate boardroom. Around the table sat the core leadership, Damon, Thomas, Luna, Marcus, who'd become head of Oracle Security, and several other trusted advisors. The good news first, Damon announced once everyone was seated. The Asian Confederation has formally requested our assistance establishing their own Oracle training program. They're offering full diplomatic recognition and favorable trade agreements. Pleased murmurs circled the table. The Asian supernatural community had always been more open to magical diversity than their European counterparts. The complicated news? Aria asked, though she suspected she already knew. Ravencroft's trial begins next week, Thomas reported grimly. His legal team is claiming he was acting to protect supernatural society from an Oracle threat. They're trying to paint him as a misguided patriot rather than a criminal. Aria felt her Oracle abilities stir in response to her anger. Even from his prison cell, Ravencroft was still trying to damage their cause. There's more, Damon continued, his mismatched eyes serious. Intelligence suggests he's not working alone. We've identified at least 3 other alpha families with ties to supernatural enhancement research. A conspiracy? Luna asked, her young face troubled. A movement, Marcus corrected. They call themselves the Purest Alliance. Their goal is to prevent what they see as supernatural evolution, maintaining traditional power structures at any cost. The implications were sobering. What they'd been treating as isolated incidents, Ravencroft's attacks, the enhanced soldiers, the political persecution, were apparently part of a larger coordinated effort. How widespread? Aria asked. Conservative estimates suggest a dozen major pack families across 4 continents, Thomas replied. Liberal estimates are much higher. Silence fell over the chamber as everyone processed the scope of the threat they faced. So, what do we do? Luna asked finally. Before anyone could answer, the chamber's emergency alarms began to wail. Through the windows, Aria could see pack members moving with practiced efficiency toward defensive positions. Thomas's radio crackled to life. Beta Grayson, we have incoming aircraft. Multiple helicopters approaching from the south. They're not responding to our hail. More enhanced soldiers? Marcus asked, already moving toward his weapons cache. No, Aria said, her oracle abilities suddenly flaring to life. Something else. Something. She paused, extending her senses further. They're not hostile. Confused, maybe desperate, but not attacking. Through the bond network that now permanently connected the Pack's Oracle-enhanced members, information flowed rapidly. The approaching helicopters carried supernatural refugees, wolves, fae, and others fleeing what appeared to be coordinated attacks across the southeastern territories. The Purest Alliance, Damon said grimly. They're not just targeting us anymore. They're going after anyone who supports Oracle integration. The first helicopter landed in their main courtyard 20 minutes later, disgorging a group of exhausted, frightened supernatural beings. Their leader, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and obvious fae heritage, approached Damon with desperate dignity. Alpha Silvermane, she said, her melodic voice carrying traces of panic. I am Elder Nasara of the Southern Oak Grove. We request sanctuary. Granted, Damon replied immediately. What happened? Coordinated strikes against 7 communities in the past 48 hours, Nasara explained. Enhanced soldiers, but better organized than before. They specifically targeted anyone who'd publicly supported Oracle rights or requested training programs. Aria felt sick. Their success had made them a symbol of hope for supernatural communities worldwide, but it had also made those communities targets. How many casualties? She asked quietly. 13 confirmed dead, dozens injured, and an unknown number captured, Nasara replied, her composure finally cracking. They took our children, Oracle. The young ones with emerging abilities. The Pack Bond network suddenly blazed with collective fury as every connected wolf felt Aria's rage. But this wasn't the wild, unfocused anger of her early days. This was the controlled, deadly fury of a moon oracle who had found her full power. Luna, Aria said, her voice carrying supernatural authority, get our children to the deep bunkers. Full lockdown protocols. Already done, Luna replied, her own abilities humming in harmony with Aria's. Marcus, coordinated with Thomas on defensive positions. But keep the main forces here. This feels like a distraction. On it. Aria turned to Damon, their mate bond singing with shared determination. They want a war? Let's give them one they'll never forget. But before they could begin planning their response, another voice cut through their tactical discussion. Actually, said a familiar, cold voice from the chamber's doorway, I think you'll find that this war is already over. Everyone spun to see a figure that should have been impossible, Alpha Ravencroft, standing free and unrestrained, flanked by what appeared to be his personal guards. Missing someone? He asked with a cruel smile, gesturing behind him. Through the doorway came a group of children, Oracle children, with blank, terrified expressions and the unmistakable scent of chemical restraints. You see, Ravencroft continued conversationally, my trial was just a convenient distraction. While your attention was focused on legal proceedings, my associates were implementing a much more direct solution to the Oracle problem. Aria's heart stopped as she recognized several faces among the captured children, young oracles who'd been attending training sessions at centers around the country. What do you want? Damon asked, his alpha power barely contained. Ravencroft's smile widened.
Simple.
You come with us voluntarily, and the children go free. Refuse, and we test just how much enhancement serum a young oracle can survive. The choice was impossible, but Aria had learned something important over the past months. Sometimes the most important battles weren't about winning or losing. They were about who you chose to be when everything was on the line. I'll come, she said quietly. Aria, no, Damon protested. But, she continued, her oracle abilities beginning to build to dangerous levels, you've made one critical mistake. Oh, and what's that? Aria's smile was sharp as starlight on steel. You assumed I'd be coming alone.
Chapter 12.
What Ravencroft hadn't anticipated was the evolution of oracle abilities over the past 6 months. The Aria he'd first encountered had been a newly awakened oracle learning to control her gifts. The woman who faced him now was something entirely different, a fully realized moon oracle backed by a network of awakened children and strengthened by the genuine love of a true mate. You see, Aria said, silver light beginning to dance around her hands, you've been operating under several false assumptions. Ravencroft's confidence wavered slightly as the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Such as, first, I need to be physically present to use my abilities. Aria's consciousness suddenly expanded, reaching out through the oracle network that now connected training centers across 3 continents. Second, that the children you captured are as helpless as you think. In facilities thousands of miles away, young oracles who'd been connected to Aria's network since their training began suddenly felt their teacher's presence blazing in their minds. More importantly, they felt her absolute confidence that they could save themselves. Third, Aria continued, her power building to levels that made the pack house's crystal windows hum with harmonic resonance, that you understand what you're really facing. That's when River stepped out from behind Ravencroft's guards. The 12-year-old boy looked different than he had that morning. Older somehow, his silver eyes blazing with power that should have been impossible at his age. The chemical restraints that had been used on him lay dissolved on the floor around his feet. Hello, Luna Aria, he said calmly. Ready to show these bad people what happens when they hurt our family? Ravencroft spun around in shock, finally realizing that his captured, oracle children were no longer restrained. One by one, they stepped forward, their combined abilities creating a web of silver light that turned his hostages into his captors. Impossible, he breathed. The enhancement serums, the restraints, they were specifically designed to suppress oracle abilities. They were designed to suppress the oracle abilities you understood, Damon said, pride and fierce love radiating through his mate's bond with Aria. You never accounted for evolution. What happened next would be remembered as the moment the supernatural world truly changed forever. Instead of fighting Ravencroft and his enhanced soldiers directly, Aria did something unprecedented. She opened the oracle network to every supernatural being in the compound. Wolves, fae, refugees. Even Ravencroft's own enhanced soldiers suddenly found themselves connected to a web of consciousness that transcended species boundaries. For the first time in their artificially enhanced lives, Ravencroft's soldiers experienced genuine empathy, connection, and the kind of love that had motivated Aria's protective fury. The contrast with their chemically induced loyalty was so stark that several of them immediately laid down their weapons. This is what you've been fighting against, Aria said, her voice reaching every mind in the network. Not power, not dominance, but connection. Understanding. The possibility that we're all stronger together than apart. Ravencroft, finding himself isolated as his own forces abandoned him, made one final desperate gambit. He lunged toward the nearest oracle child, a young fae girl who'd been among the captured, with a silver blade designed specifically to disrupt magical abilities. He never reached her. Damon intercepted him with supernatural speed, but it wasn't just his alpha strength that stopped the attack. The mate bond between him and Aria had evolved over the months, and now he carried a portion of her oracle abilities. Silver light erupted from his hands as he grappled with Ravencroft, but this wasn't destructive magic, it was transformative. Under the influence of pure oracle power, the enhancement chemicals in Ravencroft's system began breaking down. But more than that, the artificial barriers he'd built around his conscience, his empathy, his basic decency, started dissolving as well. For the first time in decades, Alpha Ravencroft experienced genuine remorse for his actions. "My daughter," he whispered, the silver light fading as he collapsed to his knees. "What have I done to my daughter?" The reference to Celeste, still imprisoned for her role in the attacks, sent ripples of understanding through the Oracle network. Ravencroft's hatred hadn't been born from fear of change, but from grief and guilt over his family's corruption. "It's not too late," Aria said gently, extending her hand to help him stand. "Redemption is always possible for those willing to choose it." The aftermath was swift and decisive. With Ravencroft's surrender, the purest alliance's coordination collapsed. Enhanced soldiers across multiple territories laid down their weapons as the Oracle network's influence spread, showing them alternatives to chemical loyalty and artificial purpose. The captured Oracle children were safely returned to their families, but not before demonstrating abilities that surpassed anything previously recorded. River, in particular, had manifested what researchers would later term network amplification, the ability to boost other Oracle's powers through conscious connection. "The world just changed again," Thomas observed as they watched the rescued children reuniting with their families in the Pack House's Great Hall. "For the better," Luna added, her arm around young River's shoulders. "Did you see what he did? He didn't just escape those restraints, he turned them into power boosters for the other kids." But it was Damon's quiet observation that captured the true significance of what they'd accomplished. "It's not about the power," he said, watching Aria heal the lingering effects of enhancement chemicals in surrendered soldiers. "It's about what she chooses to do with it. Every time she could have chosen domination, she chose connection instead." As the evening settled into something approaching normalcy, Aria found herself in the garden where she'd first confessed her love for Damon. The Oracle network had quieted to a gentle background hum, connecting her to hundreds of awakened individuals across the globe, but no longer demanding active attention. "Regrets?" Damon asked, joining her on the familiar bench. "About today?" "None." She leaned against his shoulder, marveling at how perfectly they fit together. "About the contract marriage that started all this?" "Definitely none." "Even though it got complicated?" "Especially because it got complicated." Aria smiled, remembering the terrified, rejected wolf who'd signed those papers what felt like a lifetime ago. Complicated means real. Complicated means it matters. Through their mate bond, she felt his deep contentment, his pride in what they'd built together, and his excitement for whatever came next. "Speaking of what comes next," Damon said with a smile in his voice, "Luna made an interesting suggestion today." "Oh, something about a real wedding. Apparently, our contract ceremony was nice, but this calls for something special." Aria laughed, the sound carrying across the garden and drawing answering laughter from the Pack House where their family, chosen and born, Oracle and Wolf, traditional and revolutionary, was settling in for the night. "A real wedding sounds perfect," she said. "But let's make sure we invite everyone in the network. I have a feeling our guest list is going to be much bigger than we originally planned." As they walked back toward the house together, silver light dancing between their joined hands, neither of them noticed the figure watching from the forest edge, a young woman with familiar platinum blonde hair and calculating blue eyes. Celeste Ravencroft had escaped from prison that morning, and she had plans of her own for the Oracle who destroyed her family's legacy. Chapter 13. The real wedding took place 3 months later under the autumn moon, in the same stone circle where Aria and Damon had first completed their contract ceremony. But this celebration was everything their first had only pretended to be: genuine, joyous, and witnessed by the largest gathering of supernatural beings in recorded history. Representatives from 47 different packs attended, along with fae courts, vampire covens, and magical communities from 6 continents. The Oracle network had transformed from a local experiment into a global phenomenon, and everyone wanted to witness the union that had started it all. Aria stood in the bridal preparation area, a silk pavilion erected near the ceremony site, while Luna and Mira fussed over the final details of her dress. The gown was a masterpiece of crystal and moonstone that seemed to capture and reflect starlight, but it was the crown of silver leaves that truly marked this as an oracle ceremony. "You look like a fairy tale princess," River announced, peering into the pavilion with the frank admiration of a 12-year-old who'd become her honorary little brother. "Thank you, sweetie. Is everything ready out there?" "Damon's pacing like a caged wolf," Luna reported with a grin. "It's actually kind of adorable." Through the Oracle network that now connected over 300 individuals worldwide, Aria could sense the excitement and love radiating from everyone present. But underneath that joy was a thread of tension that had been building for weeks. Celeste Ravencroft was still missing. Intelligence reports suggested she'd been gathering supporters, wolves who resented the changes sweeping through their society, who wanted to return to the old ways of clear hierarchies and simple power structures. Most concerning were rumors that she'd somehow acquired enhancement technology even more advanced than her father's. "Any word from the security teams?" Aria asked Thomas, who appeared at the pavilion entrance. "The perimeter is clear," he reported. "Marcus has every approach covered, and we've got Oracle children monitoring for spiritual disturbances." But Aria sensed there was more. But if Celeste is planning something, today would be the perfect opportunity. Maximum publicity. Maximum symbolic impact. Before Aria could respond, the ceremonial bells began to ring, signaling the start of the procession. Whatever threats might be lurking, her pack family deserved this moment of celebration. The walk to the stone circle felt like floating. Hundreds of candles lit the forest path, and supernatural beings of every description lined the route, their faces filled with hope and wonder. For many of them, this wedding represented proof that their world could evolve, could become something better than it had been. Damon waited at the center of the ancient circle, and Aria's breath caught at the sight of him. He wore traditional ceremonial robes, but his scarred face was transformed by joy and anticipation. When their eyes met, the mate bond between them blazed with such intensity that several empathic guests actually gasped. The ceremony itself was a blend of ancient werewolf traditions and new oracle rituals. Elder Nasara, whose Fey Grove had been one of the first communities to request oracle integration, presided over the vows with a grace that made the very air seem sacred. "Do you, Damon Silvermane," she intoned, her voice carrying clearly across the gathered crowd, "take Aria Nightingale as your mate, to stand with her through every challenge, to grow with her through every change, to love her through every transformation this new world may bring?" "I do," Damon replied, his voice steady despite the emotion in his mismatched eyes. "By moon and star, by earth and sky, by the bonds that tie all living things together, I claim Aria as my mate, my partner, my equal in all things. Do you, Aria Nightingale, take Damon Silvermane as your mate, to stand with him through every challenge, to grow with him through every change, to love him through every transformation this new world may bring?" Aria felt the weight of hundreds of expectant gazes, the hopes of communities worldwide, the love of her chosen family. But most of all, she felt the absolute certainty that this scarred alpha had become her home, her anchor, her greatest adventure. "I do," she said, her voice ringing with oracle power that made the ancient stones themselves seem to hum in response. "By moon and star, by earth and sky, by the bonds that tie all living things together, I claim Damon as my mate, my partner, my equal in all things." The moment their hands touched to complete the ceremony, silver light erupted from every oracle present. But this wasn't just a magical display. It was a network activation that spanned the globe, connecting every awakened oracle in a moment of shared joy and unity. The crowd's collective gasp of wonder was interrupted by something far less pleasant, the sound of helicopter rotors approaching fast. Well, a familiar voice amplified by magical enhancement called out across the celebration. "Isn't this touching?" Celeste Ravencroft descended from a hovering aircraft in full combat gear, flanked by a dozen enhanced soldiers who looked far more advanced than anything they'd encountered before. But it was Celeste herself who drew the most attention. Her body showed signs of enhancement that went beyond anything previously seen, her eyes glowing with unnatural energy. Sorry to crash the party, she continued, landing gracefully in the circle center, but I have a wedding gift to deliver. Security forces moved to surround her, but Celeste raised a device that made everyone freeze, a silver orb covered in runes that pulsed with malevolent energy. Oracle suppression field, she announced with a cold smile. My father's final gift to me before his unfortunate redemption. One button, and every oracle within a mile radius loses their abilities permanently. The threat was real. Aria could feel her connection to the network wavering, the silver light around her hands dimming. What do you want? Damon asked, positioning himself between Celeste and Aria. What I've always wanted, Celeste replied. Recognition. Respect. The acknowledgement that some of us were strong enough without needing magical enhancement. You enhanced yourself, Luna pointed out from the crowd, her young voice cutting through the tension. Temporarily, Celeste snarled. To prove a point, I can defeat your precious oracle even with her own advantages. This isn't about strength, Aria said, stepping forward despite Damon's protective instincts. This is about fear. You're afraid that in a world where everyone can be extraordinary, being ordinary means being invisible. Don't psychoanalyze me, Celeste snapped, but her hand tightened on the suppression device. Then let me offer you something better, Aria continued, carefully extending her consciousness toward the other woman. Connection. Understanding. A place in the network where your skills and experience would be valued. For a moment, Celeste wavered. Through her oracle abilities, Aria could sense the deep loneliness, the desperate need for validation, the fear of being left behind that drove all of Celeste's actions. But then the enhanced woman's expression hardened. I don't want your pity network. I want to prove that natural strength still matters. She lunged forward with supernatural speed, the suppression device falling as she drew a silver blade designed specifically to disrupt oracle healing abilities. But what she hadn't counted on was the evolution of those she was fighting. Damon intercepted her attack, but this time he wasn't alone. Through the mate bond, Aria's abilities flowed into him, while simultaneously the Oracle network provided tactical awareness and enhanced reflexes to everyone connected. The fight that followed was brief, but spectacular. Celeste's enhancements made her incredibly fast and strong, but she was fighting not just two individuals, but an entire interconnected community. Every move she made was anticipated, every attack countered, every tactical advantage neutralized by the collective awareness of hundreds of awakened minds. When it ended, Celeste lay unconscious but unharmed, her enhancement chemicals neutralized by oracle healing magic that had been carefully modified to help rather than hurt. Will she be all right? Asked one of the wedding guests, genuinely concerned despite the threat she'd posed. She'll be fine, Aria assured them, kneeling beside the fallen woman. The enhancements were damaging her system anyway. Without them, her body can heal properly. And then? Damon asked. Then we offer her what we've offered everyone else, Aria replied.
A choice.
She can keep fighting a world that's already changed, or she can help us make it better. As security teams carefully removed Celeste and her unconscious soldiers, Elder Nasara cleared her throat. If the excitement is over, she said with fake humor, I believe we have a ceremony to complete. The celebration that followed was everything a supernatural wedding should be. Wild, joyous, and filled with magic that had nothing to do with oracle abilities and everything to do with love, community, and hope for the future. 2 years later, Aria stood in the nursery of their expanded home, watching twin babies sleep in their cribs. The boy had his father's mismatched eyes, while the girl had inherited her mother's auburn hair. Both showed early signs of oracle abilities that promised to surpass anything previously recorded. They're perfect, Damon whispered, wrapping his arms around her from behind. They're ours, Aria corrected, leaning back against his chest. Through the nursery windows, she could see the Oracle Academy that now dominated much of their territory, a sprawling complex where supernatural children of every species learned to develop their abilities in an environment of acceptance and support. The world had changed dramatically since their wedding. The Oracle Network now connected over 1,000 individuals across the globe, fostering cooperation between previously isolated communities. Wars between supernatural factions had all but ceased, replaced by collaborative efforts to solve problems that affected everyone. Even Celeste had eventually chosen integration over isolation. After months of careful rehabilitation, she'd become one of their most effective instructors, her experience with enhancement technology helping other supernatural beings deal with artificial modifications safely. Any regrets? Damon asked the same question he'd posed in their garden 2 years earlier. About the contract that brought us together? Never. Aria smiled, watching their son's tiny hand grasp at moonbeams streaming through the window. About the complications that followed? Never. About the world-changing responsibilities that came with falling in love? Especially not those. Through the Oracle network that had become as natural as breathing, she could sense Luna teaching a class of young wolves about emotional healing, River working with fake children on network integration, and Marcus coordinating security for Oracle communities on 3 continents. Her mother's emerald necklace, now worn by their daughter as she slept, pulsed with gentle warmth, a reminder that some gifts passed from generation to generation, growing stronger with each sharing. "What are you thinking about?" Damon asked, his mate bond carrying his curiosity and deep contentment. How a rejected mate and a contract marriage became the foundation for something none of us could have imagined, Aria replied. How sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places. And how much I'm looking forward to watching our children grow up in a world where being different means being gifted, not broken. As if responding to her voice, their daughter opened her eyes, one silver, one gold, and smiled. The future had never looked brighter. The end. Thank you for following Aria and Damon's journey from contract marriage to true love, from rejection to acceptance, from isolation to connection. Their story shows us that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from standing alone, but from choosing to stand together.